Yes, good old TJ.
Konnichiwa, Neil guy back in a reaction video. And today, guys, we're doing a Fate video. I know we haven't done a Fate video in a minute. And this one actually I had downloaded onto my system for a minute on my laptop. This one is called Saber of Black Siegfried Explain Fate Apocrypha Past and Noble Phantasm. So yes, I've done Sig, the homunculus of Fate Apocrypha, right? So now we're going to actually do the other half of Zig. You know, at the Fried, obviously. We're doing SIEGFRIED, you know what I'm saying? We're doing the actual, the legendary servant and everything like that. The Saber of Black. So we're actually going to get into that. So, oh, I just rhymed. I didn't even try. Anyway, before you get to it, guys, like the video. You guys like what you're seeing in here. Also as well, I know that 88% of you guys that watch my videos are not subscribed. So if you guys can hit the subscribe button. If you guys are enjoying what you see here, hit the notification message, click all. So we know if I make every time I make a feature upload. And yeah, without further, oh, and also comment down below anything you guys want to discuss, anything like that, or any videos you have in mind that you want me to react to. Like I said, I react and I comment to all of my comments. So yeah, go ahead and do that if you guys want to be, you know, having a discussion, everything like that in comments. But alright, guys, without further ado, let's get right into this. So play.
We finally get to the Saber of Black. You know, this was one of those servants that had been voted for a fair amount of times in every single poll. Like, coming in second, I think, around 8 times in a row, but just never quite getting enough to win the vote. Until now, that is. So all of you Saber fans can finally be happy, cause it's time for the Dragon-Blooded Knight's moment in the spotlight. Or you may know him as Siegfried, or in Fate Apocrypha, the Saber of Black. Although his time was really short in the show, spanning a grand total of 4 episodes before literally ripping his heart out so that Sieg could become the most OP thing since Kirito, he still manages to
because Kirito was OP as well.
But to be honest, other than the fact that he slayed a dragon and drank its blood to become invulnerable, we don't really know too much about him.
Is that why his chest glowing like that?
So let's
Because
take
of
a
the dragon's
more thorough
blood?
look at who he was back when he was alive.
Is that what it is?
Last episode we covered Atalanta's roots in Greek mythology, but now we're gonna switch it over to some of that Norse stuff. You know, with the gods like Odin and Thor. Siegfried's legend originates from what's known as an epic poem called the Nibelungenlied, or in English, the Song of the Nibelungs. Not to be confused with a very similar story of the hero Sigurd. But rather than tell the story of his many adventures, this epic poem skips over the ones in which he received his sword and slew the dragon, to instead tell the tragedy of his death. Cause apparently hearing about a knight slay a dragon is much less interesting than the story of his way too conveniently planned out demise.
What?
And you'll see why I say this real soon, don't worry. To begin, we're gonna skip over Siegfried's birth, because he actually had a pretty luxurious upbringing. Mostly due to the fact that he was born a prince in the Netherlands, and unlike Semiramis, or Jack, or Karna, or Atlanta, he wasn't abandoned by some good-for-nothing parents. Which is pretty strange because I thought we had a pretty good theme going on here. So let's start with the adventure where he got his sword Balmung. There are many variations to this story, but what is known is that Siegfried was asked to divide up some treasure equally to the heirs of a royal family known as the Nibelungen. In exchange, he'd be rewarded with the legendary sword. But what Siegfried thought was equal, the heirs didn't, so a fight broke out and Siegfried just ended up killing them both. The people who had just had their next kings killed weren't quite happy, so they challenged Siegfried as well. But after losing about 12 giants and 700 or so warriors, the people just surrendered. They gave Siegfried all their treasure, including Balmung, and made him their king. Now, before I go on, just know that there are many other interpretations of Siegfried's story. So
I'm gonna pause. So just imagine that you guys send all these soldiers, all them giants to go and beat this dude, right? But he ends up beating all the people you sent over there, and then you're just like, okay, let me just give you everything because we was in our feelings. We wanted to do, you know, send these people over because of such and such, and then now you got all the treasure and everything like that. You know what I'm saying? Like that could have been so avoided, honestly, in my opinion. But hey, I might not know too much about it. But anyway, it is what it is. So let's get right to it, guys. So play.
Be using them interchangeably without even knowing it. But moving on, Siegfried, now in possession of this legendary sword, proceeded to go on another adventure to acquire even more treasure. This time, this treasure was guarded by a dwarf turned dragon named Fafnir. The details of this fight were glossed over, but
Oh,
essentially,
Fafnir.
Fafnir got his ass kicked, and then Siegfried, like a true badass, bathed in the blood of his enemies. Even got a bit weird and drank some of it, which, as you already know, ended up making him invulnerable. But because there was a small leaf on his back when he went for this little swim, there was a part of his body that didn't get touched by the dragon's blood, making that his one and only weak spot. It's at this point that Siegfried decides to travel to Burgundy because he had been hearing stories of a beautiful Burgundian princess named Kriemhild, whom he wanted to marry. But the Burgundians would not allow him to meet her yet. More so, it was the king, Gunther, Kriemhild's brother, who didn't allow the two to meet. Siegfried decided to stay in Burgundy anyway, most likely an attempt to gain the trust of the king so that he would allow him to meet his sister. Really, all it took was Siegfried to defeat an invading German tribe in order for Gunther to allow the two to meet. Not a big deal for someone who can't die. And so, they ended up meeting. But Siegfried was still unable to
Hey, I'm
marry
gonna pause again. I know it's like just something minor, like the fact that he just said he's immortal, right? But the fact that, okay, you don't believe me, but I had to beat an entire army just so I can meet. Not that I can marry, right? Not that I can marry her or nothing like that. No. Or you take her on a date or whatever. I can just meet her after beating an entire army. What's the equivalent and all that? You know, like what? All right. Anyway, play.
That was up until King Gunther made a deal. Siegfried was to sail to Iceland with Gunther to help him in his attempts to marry the Icelandic queen, Brunhild. Once arrived at Iceland, the marriage is proposed, but the queen says that in order for the marriage to be accepted, Gunther has to beat Brunhild in 3 trials of strength: javelin, tossing a boulder, and a leap. Now, Gunther wasn't the strongest person, and after seeing the Icelandic queen go first, he knew that he was gonna lose. And of course, in good old mythological fashion, losing meant dying. So Siegfried does what he does best, and he goes to help out his buddy. He retrieves an invisible cloak that he just so happened to get from one of his adventures, puts it on, and guides Gunther with ease through each of the trials. Gunther wins, and the two get married. Kriemhild and Siegfried are then married shortly after. And that's it. Happy ending for everybody. Nah, but seriously, Brunhild had a feeling that something was off. So when Gunther had tried to sleep with her, she instead tied him up and hung him from the ceiling. So it was clear that Gunther wasn't going to get any action until he could overpower Brunhild. So what does he do? He goes and asks Siegfried for help. Now you're probably thinking that since Siegfried's a heroic spirit and all, by saying he'd help, surely he just means that he'll have a nice little chat or something, right? Nope, this man gets his invisibility cloak, sneaks into Gunther's room at night, then beats Brunhild into submission so that Gunther can have his way with her. Well then, that was quite unexpected. But anyway, before Siegfried leaves, he takes Brunhild's ring and belt and gives it to Kriemhild before leaving to go back to the Netherlands. Now, before we go on, don't even bother asking me how this Icelandic queen didn't even realize that she was getting the ship.
I'ma pause one last time. My last time. If I would never ever ask for Siegfried up in that situation like that. I don't need nobody to literally knock somebody out that I want to be with or do anything with. So yeah, that's not the way, bruh. That's not the way, baby. So I'm gonna say on that. Alright, so play.
Out of her by some invisible force, alright? So that's just beyond me. Anyway, a few years pass and Siegfried is visiting Gunther in Iceland. But this whole time, Brunhild has believed that Siegfried is of lower status than Gunther because for some reason, even though the whole kingdom knows of his adventures, Brunhild hasn't heard a thing. This chick has to be the most oblivious person I've ever come across. So she spouts on and on about how Gunther is better than Siegfried to Kriemhild. The two wives start arguing because obviously this wasn't true, but Brunhild refuses to believe anything. So Kriemhild says screw this and whips out Brunhild's belt and ring and exposes Siegfried's actions. Of course this would be very humiliating for both the Queen of Iceland and the King of Burgundy, but Gunther wanted to avoid conflict with Siegfried knowing that he'd get his ass whooped. So Siegfried is pardoned for his wife's actions and allowed to leave without consequence. However, a loyal knight to Gunther named Hagen couldn't stand for the shame of his king. So he makes a plot to sway Kriemhild into revealing Siegfried's weak spot so that he could kill him.
That's so sad.
Not only does Kriemhild reveal his weak spot, she also goes and marks it on his back with a cross so that Hagen would know exactly where it is when they went on their hunting trip. But how that's not suspect at all is beyond me too. Then comes the day of the hunting trip. Hagen and Siegfried are out searching for prey when they decide to take a break and get a drink from a nearby stream. Siegfried conveniently leans over, exposing his weak spot so that all Hagen has to do was just plunge the spear into his back. And that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
The legendary hero Siegfried, who slayed a dragon and defeated armies, dies from behind at the hands of one of his comrades.
It be on
A
people,
real
man.
tragedy this one is.
Be on.
It's thought that he just let it happen, because people believe that Siegfried felt that if he was to remain living, a war would eventually break out between himself and Gunther. And as a man that has constantly helped others, he felt that his final deed to help everyone would be to just let himself die. Spoiler alert, it didn't really help. But that's an entirely different story for another date. Siegfried's story is interesting because the Fate version of it, which is by the way essentially the same, explains Siegfried's motives a bit more. It's said that because Siegfried was such a great hero, he would never act of his own accord, but rather act on the wishes of others so that they may become true. Because that was the true responsibility of a hero who has been granted immense power. And it shows in Siegfried's character. I mean, I don't think any other servant would just willingly give up their heart for this. But you know, it is what it is. So let's move on to his abilities now. Obviously, his greatsword Balmung is one of his noble phantasms. It's referred to as the Phantasmal Greatsword, Felling of the Sky Dragon.
That's a dope name.
The blade itself is kind of a paradox because it's both cursed and holy at the same time. It can become either a demonic or holy sword depending on its wielder. There's a jewel located in the hilt that allows for Siegfried to release an anti-army type attack. Basically, it's the giant slash that we see in the show. All he has to do is chant, "O sword, let thee be filled," then the jewel that stores the magical energy releases it all at once in one big strike. Then there's his armor. It's called the Armor of Fafnir, blood armor of the evil dragon.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
This
that makes
incorporates the dragon's body into himself and grants him the invulnerability that
sense.
he
Yeah, I
had
guess
when
that's why
he
he
was
can turn
alive.
into a dragon as well, right?
It even affects his insides as well, since he went and drank the dragon's blood too. Essentially, all physical and magical attacks have no effect, unless they're more powerful than the stuff from the Age of the Gods. Unlike Karna's though, it can't be removed. It's always active, basically a passive skill. However, just like in the legend, he's weakest at the spot in his back. It's marked by the shape of a leaf, and due to the curse in his past life, his back will always have to be exposed. Even a magical barrier would still leave a gap open to allow for his back to be striked, because that's just how potent the curse is. Then we've got one more noble phantasm, but it's really useless and we don't see it in the show. It's called Das Rheingold, and it's an ability that summons the treasure that he claimed after defeating Fafnir. As for skills, he has the riding skill as well, which is consistent with all Saber classes, as well as the golden rule skill, which is also pretty useless since it just measures his ability to acquire wealth. Obviously, referring to his past in which he acquired so much treasure from all his adventures. But yeah, that's pretty much Siegfried. Seems like once his identity is revealed, it wouldn't be too hard to eliminate him from the war, especially if you've got a skilled assassin on your side. It really is a shame that we didn't get to see him fight more. I mean, like, once he was gone from the Black Faction, in terms of power, the only strong servant they would have to be Vlad or someone. Maybe if Siegfried was still around, we wouldn't have to reinforce Astolfo and Sieg with so much plot armor. But oh well. As always, thanks for
That's
watching.
crazy,
and if you want to help
man.
decide who I
That's
cover in
crazy
the
with
next week's
Siegfried because
episode, then go ahead and vote in
the
the
thing
poll on
is,
the
it's
community
like,
section. So until
okay,
then,
what's so
ciao.
crazy to me is like, okay, I understand it's a curse and all that, right? But like, why? Because of the leaf? I mean, I know he said because it didn't hit him, but like when like after him being in the blood and all that type of stuff like that from Fafnir, wouldn't it just like soak onto that part right on his back? Like that's the thing though. It's like wouldn't it, right? But I guess they have to make it to a way where he's just not invincible, I guess. But it's weird. It's weird. I don't know. Also too, like when he took out his heart and gave it to Sig, like how is he still like doing all those motions before he actually passed? That's another thing too. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, like I say, Saber Black, Siegfried, yeah, I don't know. But like I said, ANINEWS link will be sure down below. First link is sure down below will be to ANINEWS channel. Like, subscribe on the video, and yeah, without further ado, INCOG out. Peace.